Welcome everyone. Appreciate you all taking time to come out and join us here for our Learn at Launch series. And want to say a quick welcome and thank you to our friends at Innovatemap. This got started real quick just by a simple reach out to, I think I reached out to Katie and to Chelsea, and I just said, hey, I've been following along, and I do, and I would just say to you guys, if you're not following them on LinkedIn, you should. Because I find it interesting of the things that are, obviously they do a great job there of the things they're writing and saying and events that they're doing. And I just was curious of what was happening. I thought, number one, we need to get them back in the building. They provide a lot of energy and a lot of good topics and things that they talk about. And I said, hey, can we get you guys back in and have a good conversation of something that was, I think, going on in New York at the time. And so I was like, yeah, I think we can do that. And so they got going and thought, hey, we can get some people together and we can get Mike up on stage and have, he can moderate this. So, you guys all know Mike, and Mike's the CEO, co-founder of Innovatemap. So, I'll turn it over to him. But, this is a series that we're doing, Learn at Launch. And so I want to welcome these guys. I'm going to turn it over to Mike. Mike's going to run with it. I'll come back up at the end, want to share a few things about our series and some of the events that are going to happen here for the rest, I think for the next 4 or 5 months that we have. So Mike, welcome to your team, and glad to have you guys here.
This is on? Perfect. Thank you. I want to say a quick thank you to Launch Fishers. One of our values at Innovatemap is community. It's very important to us to do stuff like this. I was, like I said, in your shoes. For many of you that were a founder, that's where I met Myles. I was in a co-working space when I started Innovatemap, and we've got a great set of things today, so I'll cover a little bit real quick about Innovatemap, and I'm not going to spend too much time on it because I want to get to our wonderful guests and get to good conversation. So I know most of you in the room, but for those of you who don't know me or Innovatemap, I've been personally in digital products for over 30 years, and about almost 12 years ago, instead of doing digital product for yet another software company, I saw a need in the market of making that service available to companies that need it most in the early stage of a tech company or early stage of a career or at an inflection point of high growth. So that's what kind of started me to build Innovatemap. Touch on that. So what is Innovatemap? We're a strategy and design partner with a real sweet spot in tech companies and tech growth, primarily because we offer 2 core services. We offer product services and then go-to-market services. In both services, our sweet spot is helping with the strategy and design of that element. So our product services, these are our product managers and UX designers. We're helping think through what's the right technical product to build and the design of it. And then our go-to-market team is brand and product marketing expertise. And they're thinking about how you tell your story, how you show up in market, your positioning, your messaging, how to demo your product, website, all the activation are things that we will help with. When people come to us, or typical things, why they might need our services, a lot of times it's they've got a vision, they got to bring that to life. They want to sell more of their software and they struggle with the story or the outside opinion that people have of their business. Usability is something that they would like to hone in on. And these are a variety of reasons that a company would call us and we would partner with them. At this point, I said we're in our 12th year. We have clients everywhere, although our roots are completely Indianapolis. It's still a strong piece of our client base, and worked with about over 350 companies. Really proud to say that a lot of these companies, our work has helped them get funding or get clients or get customers. With a couple on the right, some of these are actually from Fishers, so hopefully there's some familiar names on the right. So getting into the content, we've got 2 awesome, both founders, and I'll let them introduce their background. I've had the pleasure of working with both of them. Like I said, I met Myles 12 years ago when he was starting his first company. We worked in the Speakeasy in Broad Ripple, probably for about 18 months next to each other. And then Megan's been an incredible founder at Plan Forward, and we've had the privilege of helping her and her company several times with their various design and strategy efforts. So with that, I'm going to turn it to introducing them individually. We've got Megan Lohman from Plan Forward. And then Myles Grote, who's at Elevate Ventures. And I'm going to tell you, just given the size of this room and the group, because we all know each other pretty well, this is going to be pretty casual. So we give you guys a structure. We're going to, a couple topics that I thought that we've put together to kind of cover that's valuable. But before I dive into this, I want to get a sense of the room because I think we can tailor our questions better. How many of you are running a business right now? Okay. How many of you are starting a business or in that mode? Okay, good. And then how many of you are just fans of the community and happy to be here and listen to good conversation? Okay, so this is good. Let me do this. Before we dive into conversation, love for each of you to give a more deeper introduction of yourself. So things like a little bit about yourself, certainly about your respective companies, and then one thing that you're excited to share today, and hopefully it comes across. Megan, we'll start with you. And maybe additionally add what you're maybe currently working on.
Well, thank you, Myles, for the assist. No, I'm Megan. I'm really excited to be here sharing the stage with these two. So my background, I was born and raised in Indiana. I went to IU, started my career in a corporate job in medical sales, and then wound my way through. I was a first employee of a marketing agency startup, so nothing in the tech world, and tripped into working in a dental office, of all places, during a transitional period in my life. And I've been in dentistry now for 13 years. So it was during this time that I was fielding more kind of business financial questions from patients when the Affordable Care Act was implemented, because a lot of patients didn't have dental insurance. So that led to creating more of a subscription plan for uninsured patients. And that led to the birth of Plan Forward, which is a SaaS platform that dentists and dental groups use to offer and automate subscription plans for uninsured patients. So founded that back in 2018 and have been doing it ever since. Oh, something I'm excited.
Yeah, something you're working on right now. Like where are you at right now?
Which problem do you want to know about? No. What are we working on right now? Well, there are a lot of complexities with what we do. It is healthcare and insurance, so it's highly regulated. We've been moving up market to sell to large dental groups, so more an enterprise play. And a couple of our large, they're called DSOs or dental service organizations. They have really fun, unique data needs. So we've been really diving into the best way to facilitate and share the data that we have access to so that they can understand their business a little bit better. So that's what's on my plate today.
That's great. Myles?
Tess. First off, go Pacers.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm Myles Grote. I'm a fourth generation Hoosier entrepreneur. I watched my dad build a business alongside my mom, services-based business back in the 1980s, 1990s. And so really from that experience, watching them developed an incredible affinity for the struggles, many struggles that entrepreneurs experience. My parents and my grandparents did not want me to be an entrepreneur. They did everything possible to convince me not to be, but I eventually, after 5 years of working in Chicago at a fintech company, and after building something at IU that ended up being pretty special, decided to quit my job and against the grain of my family trying to convince me, started a sports tech company. So not only was I starting a company, but starting a company in a nascent category that no one believed in. And so me and my business partner, who was my roommate at IU, we started the IU Mini Marathon together there. So developed a working relationship together. We went off and started this company, quit our jobs in August of 2012. I moved back to Indy. And we were eventually going to move the company out to Washington, D.C., because that's where he was and that's where our investors were. But Elevate Ventures, we got connected with them, which is where I'm at now. So I'll bring this story full circle. Elevate was like one of the only investors who would believe in us. Again, a nascent category. 2012, things still weren't great, from post great financial crisis. And so we had to go out and convince a bunch of industry agnostic investors why they should invest in sports tech, which was a very much an uphill battle. So eventually Elevate believed in us, took a swing on a couple of first-time Hoosier entrepreneurs, and we ended up getting them an exit in 2019, I think it was, 2019. So I had a really long relationship with them, stayed in touch with the folks there, saw the different leadership turnover, eventually joined the team, and 2023. And so now I'm a partner on the investment team. I lead pretty much from the time that we say yes to a company in terms of like we want to move you into due diligence to the time we close. Like I worked with Megan on closing their deal. That's kind of my purview. So fun thing that we're working on right now. I would just say Rally is always a fun thing to work on. I think it's a really important, it's become a really important thing for the community. And there's a lot of new exciting things happening, some that have been announced, some that haven't been announced. But that's been something fun that we've been working on recently.
Awesome. Buy your tickets for Rally. So let's start with recency. Like, this is a fun question I always like. As you're going through your day-to-day, thinking of last year, what is something that, recently made you stop and say, more people need to know about this experience? And whether it be investing, sales, running a company. Megan, maybe if we start with you. What's something that really hits you that you're like, I feel like more people need to know about this?
Gosh, in the day-to-day, I think like we were talking before, there are just so many challenges and problems that you're working through, whether you're owning or running a business or working at a company, it just feels like you're fielding, problems and solving problems day in and day out. And so it's sometimes really hard to just kind of stop and really appreciate the wins and actually recognizing when it is a win. I think for me personally, it's been a little challenging to do that over the last year because it just seems, you're just, everything's getting more complex when the customers get bigger and needier, and, things move at lightning speed. And so just stopping and, smelling the roses, taking a walk outside and just like actually bringing a little levity into the day. It's not super exciting, but I think it's something that's super important for sustainability in this particular seat.
And for sanity.
For sanity,
so Megan,
absolutely.
I'm gonna dive into that one more. Is there a recent win that you're very proud of you can share with the group?
Yeah, so we have, like I was mentioning, we started selling to dental groups when we launched our integrated product in 2023, and there's a big education piece that goes into like why these groups would benefit, why their business, their EBITDA, and their bottom line would benefit from a membership plan. And we were in a really competitive sales deal with a very tech-forward DSO they have a ton of money backing them. They've got very aggressive growth plans, and they evaluated all the tech products out there, and we won because of our tech, specifically because of our tech and our industry knowledge, which, competitive deals, we're in competitive deals all the time, but the fact that they are so tech forward, like most of their patients book their dental appointment with an app. They're in 12 locations in New York City, 3 in Boston. They're in these major metropolitan areas with a very young, kind of hip, patient base, and they're so tech forward. They're all about product. So we won on product. So thank you, Innovatemap. And that just happened, I think, January we closed and we launched them in March. So it's been good.
It's great. Myles, something I think everybody should know?
Yeah, this actually happened like a couple months ago in the day-to-day, but we were talking with a YCOM company that had recently graduated. It was a sports tech company. I actually forget what they were doing, but we were just like more just kind of getting acquainted, and it was a mutual contact. But what I found super interesting was that they had 3 co-founders. 2 were not technical, 1 was technical, but every single one of them contributed to code, which I thought was like super. It was the first time I've ever heard that before, and so I think you can't get up on a panel without talking about AI, but like there are tools out there that AI has unlocked that allows non-technical founders like myself. Like me and my business partner were not technical founders, and we struggled like greatly because of it. But there are tools out there now that allow you to actually get in the code base and contribute. And so I would encourage everyone, especially people who are building more technical, like software as a service type products. Like I would explore that area. I don't have any great pointers for you because I haven't looked into it yet, but I found that super, super interesting.
Actually, I can relate because Jane and I have actually been getting in and using AI to write queries. And we're leading our developers on what these queries, where there's errors and things, and where we're finding inaccuracies. We will rewrite it and show them. It's been pretty fascinating.
That's pretty good, Megan. Well,
ChatGPT.
Let's go back to some of that early stage. I'm just not sure what stage everyone is in the audience, but those are where some of the best stories are. Myles, and whether it be what you're seeing at Elevate with companies, but in that first early stage, what are like some highlight best practices in terms of like things that really, early stage business owners and founders should be focused on?
I think it's just to be like really flexible and really quick. Like just be as nimble as possible. I feel like, looking back on the early days of Upper Hand, we held on to some like beliefs for too long. And so I think if you can have like a clear hypothesis of why you're doing something and test that hypothesis and either validate or invalidate it quickly, without holding onto it too long, I think can be a tremendous superpower for an early stage team. And then I would say the second thing would be just like positivity. Megan and I were talking about how it's so hard as a founder. As an investor, you have to tell people no all the time, so everyone hates you, and so you just have to deal with negativity that way. But it pales in comparison to what the founder has to experience, because not only are they getting no's from investors, they're also getting no's from customers. They're getting no's from talent. They're getting no's from their significant others about, like, should you be doing this? I mean, there's just like this constant negativity cycle. And so I think that if you can find ways to, like, especially with co-founders, like just be there for each other, like make sure that pack's really tight and that you respect that relationship as much as possible. I think that helps tremendously. And then just like self-care. I mean, that was one thing. We just like dragged ourselves in the mud so much for so many years. Like eventually that catches up to you. Like you can't do it. So like you see all these like glory stories about how people work like, 20 hours a day and stuff. Like it just, in reality, like you're gonna crash at some point. I don't care who you are. So take care of yourself and be positive.
It's great. Megan, early on, what matters most?
Early on. So I started technically with a co-founder, but he was non-operational. And so I think that was one of my biggest learnings early on, was just how hard it is to have alignment with a founding team when you're both not as invested and you're both not equally accountable to the success of the business, whether it's raising money or bringing in customers or revenue or developing the product. It created a lot of tension that we didn't solve until years down the road, and it became much more complex to kind of redo. So I think, early on, make sure that the early operators are kind of, there are defined, responsibilities and accountability, whether it's on paper or not, or just agreed upon, but just equal contributors. Or else it becomes really challenging when either things get really hard or you start to win. And then the other piece was, because I was essentially a solo founder, I relied really heavily on advisors and friends and mentors and people that just knew. I didn't start this company actually as to scale a tech company. We started it to create some little thing that, our first business plan was we were going to acquire 35 dental practices year 1, 35 dental practices year 2. We'd be cash flow positive. It would, I could work 3 days a week. It would give my family some extra income and pay for vacations. It was very much a lifestyle thing. And it wasn't until 2 years in that it really kind of took on a life of its own, that I wasn't necessarily prepared for. But I didn't know anything about a pitch deck, raising money. I couldn't talk about a cap table. There were so many things I didn't know. Go-to-market strategy, I'd never even heard that term. So, I had to learn and surround myself with people that knew all of this stuff and just try to be a sponge. So I think the power of a cup of coffee, people are so willing, especially in this network here in Indianapolis, they're so willing to help and talk, and, you can get so much out of a cup of coffee. So I think just, making sure that your early founding team is aligned and that you're reaching out to people that know what you don't, and you're really aware of where your gaps are, is pretty critical in the early stages.
That's great. Megan, staying at that stage, what are some things, now that you've had time to reflect on it, that you did that really paid off, that maybe someone else at that stage might?
Well, I brought in you as an advisor. I mean, to be honest, I think I found
I wasn't fishing for that.
No, but I think I found some like A+ people that were well known in the community and in just the tech world and the investing world that that they like actually saw and kind of believed and were willing to give me their time and their expertise. Mike was one of them. And I like gripped onto them, and, you know, just figuring out a way, whatever kind of comp, whatever it is, that's going to make it, you know, worth it for them to get them invested in what you're doing. And people will really champion you.
Appreciate that. I'm going to stay on that too, just because I'm as a founder, and we get to work with a lot of companies as well. I will often say that like self-awareness of what you're not great at and seeking coffees and mentorship for areas that are blind spots is a real best practice, something I was grateful that I did when I was starting Innovatemap. And especially in Indianapolis, I think you'll find that people will take the coffee meeting, which is great.
And on that note, so I spent probably 2 years being a sponge, and I wanted to be a sponge, and I did all these coffee meetings. But then it got to a point where I'm like, oh my gosh, I think I'm spending so much time focusing on like this kind of external learning. I'm like, I need to start focusing more inward, and I need to kind of stop and just like focus on what the business is doing and the fundamentals of actually growing the business. So there was this point where I'm like, okay, I think I have enough to kind of keep going down the path. Now these are becoming reasons to procrastinate actually doing the work and growing the company.
That's great. All right, we're going to switch to the topic of teams. Okay, Myles, I'm going to start with you. Just from an investor perspective, what are some red flags or maybe green lights that you see across the portfolio that'd be good perspective for people building teams or thinking about them to know?
Yeah, I would say kind of going back to what Megan was saying about her co-founder and about how he or she he wasn't operational. I think one of the biggest red flags is if you have, especially like early stage, if like you've got like just the co-founders and maybe like a couple outsourced devs or something working on the product. Everyone, like, there's no room for slack at all, and so like every single person that's on the team, that's on the cap table, has to have a really clear, from the investor perspective, we have to have a clear understanding for who's doing what, how they're adding value, and it's got to be significant value. It's not just like, you know, like an ops person that has 20% of the company. Like, it's got to be someone who really, really can pull their weight and 10 other people's weight, like that type of founding team. So if there is anyone who's like really important, this is like kind of like the second thing. If there's anyone who we see is like really, really important to the company, usually it's like a CTO that's like under compensated on the cap table. It's a red flag for us. And so sometimes we'll encourage the team to reshuffle the deck a little bit. Usually like a founder and a co-founder will reshuffle, give some equity to the CTO to bring them up. So that's one thing that I always look at, is like, look at the cap table, who is most incentivized to make sure the company wins, and what kind of value can they bring to the table, and make sure that all that stuff is just stacked up and super tight.
Staying on the investment perspective, but switching it more towards the positive. You're seeing a bunch of pitches. They get to the slide of our team. What are some things that excite you and the investor group in the room when it comes to either makeup of the team, or talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think for makeup, it's like founder market fit. So someone who has like some sort of domain expertise, some sort of like really close to them type of pain point that they're going to solve. That's always like something that's like really attractive, I think, from the investor perspective. There's just something that like they go to sleep thinking about it, they wake up thinking about it, they wake up 2 times in the middle of the night thinking about it. They just can't give up on it. And like, you can usually tell through a couple of interactions like who those founders are. I will say the one of the hardest things, like, this is for now at least, right? Like this is a people business. Like people start businesses and people invest in those companies. And so I think that founders are the most important part of a successful business. Are the ones who are the engine behind everything, who make the decisions, and so like I think it's the most critical part. It's also one of the most difficult parts from an investor perspective to understand who you're investing in. Like from like one pitch or something, like it's just crazy. Like for me, the best investments on the angel side or on the Elevate side that I or we have ever made are long-standing relationships, like people that I've really gotten a chance to get to know over the years. Those tend to be the best because you have the opportunity to really understand who's the engine behind everything. And it's really tough to do sometimes because you get put in a position where, first pitch and they've got the round kind of closing out and, everyone jump on board. Like those are the situations I hate, but, sometimes not so much in this market, but in, a couple years ago market, it was happening a lot. But I would say those are probably the most important.
That's good. Megan, turning to you, you've been doing this, your team, talk to us how your team has evolved over the years, and then maybe what's something that maybe you wish you knew back then during that process.
So I naturally have not loved being a salesperson. And there's, in the beginning, not just the beginning, a lot of people, including those early advisors, were like, founders should be selling to the first million. And it's like, founders have to sell. And the most painful rejection that you get daily is all that cold outreach, all those early days of like selling. That's just so hard. And I remember thinking like, I need to be doing all this other stuff, but I can't because like we have to sell, we have to get customers. So like the knee-jerk reaction is hire a salesperson. And a salesperson is never going to be as effective as the founder, especially until you've earned your stripes and you've got some sort of brand credibility, some logos under your belt, something that will tell other customers that, your product or your service is worth it. So hiring salespeople early, I think is something that I wish, I didn't hire them right away, but hired 2 people at the same time. And I think I probably wouldn't have done that thinking back.
We made the same mistake.
I mean, it's
A lot of people do it.
right. And it's just so hard to get that early sales process dialed in. I don't think there's a right answer. It's trial and error. And to your point, I think everybody does it. But also, obviously, I mentioned the original co-founder who wasn't operational. It was pretty difficult to kind of reshuffle the deck, bring in my now, what I call co-founder. She came in 2021 and has really just been the yin to my yang. I mean, we really have a chemistry that we're completely different for very good reasons. She's not even based here. I wish she was. But for a long time, trying to raise money, especially VC money, we got told no. And it's because I myself was not necessarily investable. It was a red flag to a lot of investors, and I don't necessarily disagree. Brought her in, we had a lot more success raising money because, and I feel like a solo founder situation can be really tough because you're shouldering all of it on your own. There are some out there that have amazing success stories, but I would highly recommend, even if it's not like day one. So I called Jane my co-founder because we completely reimagined the product, literally rebuilt it, went after enterprise customers, got new money. Like it's a completely different organization. Was she in there when we first originally signed the LLC? No, but she has founded everything that we are successful for today. And so just because a co-founder wasn't there from like day one, they can still be a co-founder. But my advice would be to make sure that that person has enough equity that that is motivating to them to like really go through the grind and stick with you.
That's good. So Megan, early on, I know building a team, a lot of people will do like the Pied Piper effect where they're just excited to be on the rocket ship or the potential rocket ship and they want to follow you. As you grow and get more mature, how do you keep team members engaged? What are some best practices that you do to keep them engaged?
So we have KPIs that every kind of person at our size, a person is essentially a department, that they manage. And so KPIs, I think, are one thing that they are really responsible for. And we have goals, and we really celebrate when when each department, when we're meeting our goals. The other way, we had our first offsite this year, which we haven't necessarily felt like that was the best use of our resources to do an offsite. And we're all remote, which again, isn't necessarily what I would have dreamed maybe pre-COVID, but how things have evolved in our industry. It's just we've been able to hire really great talent, and they're just remote. So being able to physically get together and kind of celebrate and do some kind of team building stuff was really rewarding as a team. And then also, we're on Slack, and so just using the huddle feels like a little water cooler talk. Just chatting people regularly, doing our daily stand-ups. We do a daily stand-up on Tuesday and Thursday morning as a whole team. So we have regular touch points, and it feels like there's a lot of togetherness, even though we do all work remote. So I think those are.
Staying on teams, Myles, I'm curious from an investor perspective, because I remember I've been in this tech community for 25 years, where the next check was easily there. And so you were always hiring, always nurturing a pipeline of talent, always growing. And now I'm getting different vibes where you've got run lean, make good hires, use fractional partners, you've got AI expectations. I'm curious from an investor, what expectations have changed as it pertains to team building?
I think there's definitely a strong desire or strong expectation from investors these days for there to be some sort of clear path to profitability, to cash flow positive. And I think as a result of that, because team personnel is typically the largest expense for any company, I think the expectation is that you operate super lean or show a path to being able to operate so lean that you can cash flow the business. That's been the expectation. I think the main driving force behind that is that interest rates are sitting at 5%, somewhere around there, and they have been for 3 years now, or they've been ticking up for about 3 years. And so whenever interest rates go up, the cost of capital goes up, which makes everything more difficult for anyone who's trying to get anything done from a capital perspective. And so that's a forcing function for everyone to get lean. I think on top of that, you've seen a productivity boom that we've never seen before, and it started during COVID, and it hasn't really slowed up since. You saw this huge spike in 2020 because everyone was forced to stay at home and figure out how to be productive, and all these companies were adopting new technologies to allow them to be more productive, to work remotely, all this good stuff. And that has not stopped. And so this whole productivity boom, I think, was it was already burning. And then you brought in artificial intelligence, this unlock that ChatGPT's new LLM unlocked in 2022. And that just exploded this mentality of lean, and just doing more with far less than we've ever done before. And it feels really hard and it feels really scary. But also if you do it right, feels really good too. And so, not to go on too much of a tangent, but those are some of the thoughts that come to mind in terms of why the expectation has changed, but it definitely has changed. And I don't know if it's gonna go anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, it's great. Well, I'm gonna switch gears from teams to a topic hopefully everybody in the room has in common: customers, ideally. So, Megan, I'm curious how you've been able to navigate customer feedback with your vision for the company and product.
Ooh. That's what I was going to say actually early on. Advice is stay so close to your customer. But there is a point where that can be detrimental because you have a small sample size and you start building your product for these few voices that you have early on. I run the product, I plan the backlog, I work with the developers, and so I basically decide what gets built when. And now that we have these, I would say, few large enterprise customers, I'm kind of in this position where they're demanding or asking for things, and we're trying to figure out do we build it? What's the ROI? Is it just specific to them, or globally, will all of our customers appreciate it? So I'm on the calls with the customers. I'm usually during the sales calls. I'm part of the sales process when it comes to the actual product and how they use our product. Usually post-launch, I'm on those early kind of check-in calls, listening to what are their problems, what questions are they having, figuring out based on tickets. I see most of the tickets that come through. And then also our client success team, we actually log all feature requests. And if it comes in more than once, we tally it. So then whenever we're not working on, we usually have big, agenda items that we're working on, big projects, but also we try to put in little feature requests and improvements just, to keep the product fresh and to make our customers know that we're listening to their feedback. So we log this feature request thing, and when I'm looking to prioritize those, we actually have the customers who've requested those. So sadly, the customers that are most valuable to us in terms of revenue typically have the loudest voice, but not always. Sometimes if there's one feature that 10 people have requested, we know, what, there's probably 100 others that are thinking the same thing. They just haven't said it. So, I think the person that is really involved in the product should definitely hear direct customer feedback. And it's really good to be part of the sales process, because a lot of the questions they're asking is hinting toward the problems they're trying to solve with what you're telling them your product can do.
That's great. Myles, what strategies are you seeing founders use to get more rapid customer insights so they can have stronger sales traction or product traction?
To be honest with you, I have not seen anything, I haven't seen the wheel get recreated since I was a founder. I think Megan's point is great. I also ran product when I was at Upper Hand, and you can get too close for sure. I think that when we were there, the one thing that we used that I thought was awesome, and I would imagine that I haven't heard from other people using it, but usertesting.com was huge. You could get a really clean cohort, segmented user. I want parents who have 3 kids, who have kids in not only baseball but also in football, and we could get really, really targeted using that tool and have them come through and experience our platform, and we could do that. We could get 100 users. It was expensive, eventually toward the end, but when we first found that app, it was pretty cheap, and it was a huge win. But I think surveys. I've never really loved surveys because I feel like people lie on surveys a lot, or they don't take them seriously. So the data doesn't end up being great. But user testing was huge for us. Full Story was another app that we used because we could actually see the user real life in the app, the customer experiencing, getting stuck, all that good stuff. So those were 2 that were lifebloods for me when I was running product and really trying to get close to the customer without getting too close and getting skewed by a small sample segment.
That's great. Yeah, we'll even see that surveys is certainly at an early stage to understand your customer is a red flag. A survey it's quantitative. It'll tell you how often and how many, and is only as good as the person writing it. Nothing beats conversations or really trying to deeply understand motivations by your customer base. So
yeah, totally one thing I'm gonna add there. One of the big most pivotal moments of Upper Hand is when we took our entire engineering team. It was one of the I didn't want to do it because we were going to be a day behind or 2 days behind. Took our entire engineering team to the closest sports facility. It was a customer called DBAT. Closest one at that point was in Columbus, Ohio. We took the entire engineering team and spent 2 days. And because the thing that we struggled with was our engineers didn't know. They weren't sports parents. They were all younger, guys with guys and girls with no kids. And so they really struggled to understand the customer. We took them and put them in the facility for 48 hours. They came out and were we need to rework the backlog. We need to do this. We need to reprioritize. I mean, it was just it was such a pivotal moment because we had just plateaued in terms of the value that we were creating for the customer. So that's another thing. The customer conversations just made me think about that. Just being out in the field and experiencing your customer firsthand, nothing beats it. It's expensive, but
it's great. A couple more questions, and we're going to get to questions from the audience here. Moving more toward a reflective mode. What's, Megan, Megan, to both of you, I'll say this to both of you. What's one thing you believe most founders get right, but maybe don't give themselves enough credit for?
I'm thinking about myself,
Yeah.
but I feel like I was so convicted that like I knew this problem more intimately and better than literally anyone on the planet. And I still believe that. And I don't care if our competitors have more money, they have bigger budgets, they've gone through mergers and acquisitions. We still win. And we still win big deals against them. And when people start to use our product, they understand why. But I can't put that into words. And so I feel like a founder who's intimately invested and involved and have experienced the problem that they're trying to solve, I lean toward those products who have
totally.
founders with those stories. So I don't think founders give themselves enough credit for maybe their own personal experiences and taking that into the business or the product that they're building or the problem they're trying to solve, and how valuable that is. Like I think about how many patients now have a dental plan because, I decided to build a software, which is kind of cool.
Very cool. Outstanding.
Thanks.
Myles?
Lob that question at me one more
Yeah.
time.
What's something founders are getting right, but they're not giving themselves enough credit for?
Yeah, I think the first thing that came to mind, which I think this is what you were saying, is like their vision. Like their vision for this product, for the customer that they're going after. I think that a lot of times, especially like first-time founders, have imposter syndrome, and so they're really hard on themselves. I think all of us, I mean, even if you're not a founder, right? Like imposter syndrome is a common thing that everyone has to deal with. But I think it really rears its like ugly head when you're, especially when you're a solo founder and you don't really have anyone to like, when you're not believing in yourself, turn around to your co-founder and be like, what are we doing? And you guys talk about it and you eventually like get back on track. But I think it's vision. Like you just got to believe in your vision for the company and be unwavering in that as much as you possibly can, and believe in your ability to be the one to go out and build it and execute and find success.
Outstanding, and I agree. Well, let's do this. Let's turn the questions to the audience. Raise your hand if you have a question. Back there.
Yeah, the earlier conversation about perhaps hiring sales individuals too quickly, but I missed what the solution was. If it was
Founder selling.
just maintain selling as a founder.
Yeah, that's really what it is.
Any other ideas?
There's literally no magic bullet. I wish there was. And we hired SDRs, which, the people that are just supposed to be like setting the demos for you. I was like, if somebody could just do the hard work of sending out the emails and doing all the cold calls, I'm happy to show up with a smile on my face and do the demo and close the deal. But the truth is, the numbers, at least with our model, the numbers just don't add up. Those people aren't going to set enough deals, enough demos for you to close to actually make the salary or their commission work in the model. There are a lot of financial models where, these can work, but I think if you don't know how to create like an SDR, AE kind of department or program and measure it, and manage those people, it can be really, really difficult. And I think we wasted a lot of money kind of hoping and praying that, one more month, they'd produce, and it just didn't.
I'll add to that just what kind of worked for us at Innovatemap when I was in early stage. I mean, the reason that founder selling is it, and I see this with our clients too, is the founder has the vision, and they're the one that can do the most rapid pattern recognition of, okay, not this, or they're buying this. And eventually when you have that working, you can give that blueprint to someone else. But it's very hard for them to figure all that out for you. But one thing that worked for me is I got educated early on about, think of the sales process, and there's likely things in the full process that isn't the best use of the founder's time. So it could be operational things, administrative things, could be scheduling, logging, complementary things to the founder that lets the founder use their superpower more. But the superpower in the selling is really your vision and your ability to make rapid product market fit pattern recognition.
Yeah, I can't take credit for this, and I would say that I've not validated this process either, but Toph, our CEO, I've heard it probably 100 times in pitches where people try to go too fast on the sales hiring. He says, you you need to restructure the sales team, and the only hire that you should have right now is a sales ops person. And that sales ops person follows you as the CEO or whoever, which co-founder is selling the product. They're stuck to you like glue for 6 months, and they document everything. They document the process. They basically put it into, this is how you would operationalize this sales process. And then only at that point where you feel like it's well documented, you have enough foundation to build on top of, that's the only point where you should bring them in. And usually, if you do that correctly, I think like in a pure play kind of SaaS business, you're usually at like 500 to $1 million in ARR at that point, which you can start, I think, thinking about bringing in that first like actual sales hire. And it wouldn't be like a red flag to an investor at that point.
It's great.
What's the salary of somebody, a sales ops person like that?
I think I don't know for sure. My gut tells me probably like 70K or something.
Exactly the number my mind was.
Yeah. Question, you first, Yep.
Mike, this question is, there's actually two questions in it. Megan, you hit the nail on the head with the problem point, that you're the best at solving this problem. So my question is based on the book, Fall in Love with the Problem, Not the Solution by Yuri Levine. If you haven't read it, it's one of my favorites. If that matters to anybody, but it's a good book. So my question is, if you are the best at solving that problem, how do you know that it's worth solving? And then monetarily wise, so how did you validate that? And then Myles, you had said the vision that you had, you got to be convicted, like you echoed that. What if the vision that you have for solving that problem is wrong? And like, how do you adjust to that? So.
Yeah, it's a great question. How do I know it was worth solving? Well, I worked in an environment that could have used this to solve a problem that we were, managing manually. So usually that's kind of the first step. When you have a solution and you figure out a manual process to solve something, once you're running it long enough, usually technology can come in and streamline it and make that easier. So I knew, because I was like running one of these subscription plans manually with lots of different patients on different plans and renewals at different times and switching plans and things, that it's very much dependent for our specific problem. It's very much dependent on the human that's actually managing the problem. And so if that human, you remove the human, the whole program falls apart. And so there are a lot of these systems and processes that small businesses or dental offices or medical practices, they have, that it's the office manager. If Susie leaves, the whole thing goes to shit. So technology, you insert that, then it becomes this, program that anybody can log in and like see what's going on and update things. And so I knew that with, not only the knowledge of the subscription, I won't bore you with the details of like the whole money flow on the back end of a dental practice. It's really complex, and it's really complex how providers are paid. And so all of that on the back end, I knew that once we had integration, we could simplify that and actually make these plans scalable. And once we saw the data with how valuable these patients were, which we validated the data side manually in our practice and a couple other practices before we actually built the integrated solution. So we actually knew that the patients who are on these plans, they spend more money, they accept more treatment, they come in more. So those are like the 3 key KPIs that dental practices look at to look at the health of their business. So we knew that the plan fundamentally delivered these results. We just didn't have access to show it at scale. And so we were like, if we can just build the thing to integrate and pull all the data, then we can actually show them and prove out what we're doing is actually making a difference to the bottom line.
Repeat the second question.
So you said, if I heard you correctly, and I apologize if I didn't, you got to be convicted by the vision.
Yeah.
That sounded more like convicted by a solution. Maybe I misheard you, but maybe I was wrong. But like, my question is if you have a vision for upper hand or whatever, did you ever pivot to another solution, or did you stay convicted to the original vision?
No, we pivoted. We held on. That was, I drew reference to this earlier. We held on too long to the original solution, to the problem. We started with a problem. my business partner called me. He was like your quintessential visionary, 100 ideas a minute. He would always call me with these business ideas. He called me with one, and I was like, that's the one. I experienced it 6 months ago. I think it's a big opportunity. I actually searched around to see if there was anyone solving this problem. And the whole concept was a marketplace to connect private sports coaches with parents and athletes. The pain point for me was like I was doing marathons. I had plateaued in my training. I couldn't qualify for Boston. I went to Google. I searched for a marathon coach in Chicago, one of the biggest cities in the world, and there was no central location to find them. So that was what the original problem that we went out to solve. Our hypothesis was that other people had the same problem and that it was a big enough market. We were wrong on the market size. It wasn't a big enough market. There wasn't enough volume of transactions occurring for that first time I find a coach. And so we figured that out once we went live a couple months in. We tried to start building new features to encourage rebookings, because we were like, well, we think the market can be big enough if people come back through and rebook. There was a small segment of customers within our total customer base that were doing this often. They were coming back and they kept on booking with the coach. And so we did customer discovery. We picked up the phone. We called the parents. Why are you booking with this coach? And they're like, well, they're telling us to. So then we called the coach. We were like, why are you telling the parents to book through the platform? And they're like, well, we run this sports facility and we don't have any software to run our operations. So we're using you for scheduling and payments. And we're like, oh, so that was kind of our aha moment. So then we did market research on how many facilities are out there in the US and Canada. And we found out there was a pretty big market that was underserved. People were using, downloadable software. There was no cloud-based software at that point that would allow these people to run these operations. And so we absolutely went through a pivot, and it was a painful process to get there. But once we found the aha moment, it was pretty fun.
Yeah, I think one thing I would add is product vision. The founder should, or at least one of the founders should always own product vision, but product vision is fluid. You should always have a vision, but the original vision is not the vision that the founder should have at year 3, 6, 7. And so the problem is what's going to shape the vision. So I do find that most successful founders are obsessed with the problem and always refreshing or updating their vision. And conviction in those patterns that you're recognizing and conviction to your vision is the right way to go. So, question over here?
Yeah, and I actually have 1 o'clock, so if you can answer quickly, great. If not, then maybe everyone else can benefit. Megan, you were talking about building features, and actually, Myles, you mentioned that people will lie on surveys. And I wonder, Megan, if you've experienced somebody asking for a feature, maybe even multiple people saying oh yeah, we really need this, and then you invest in it, and then nobody uses it, or it's not really what they actually wanted. If maybe sometimes customers are thinking about the solution rather than the problem that they have, and coming up with a solution that doesn't really solve their own problem. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the advantage that our CS and myself have is we've worked in the dental office, so we actually know intimately what, the operations. So when they're asking for the solution, we usually push back and just try to dig a little bit deeper and figure out why are you pushing this button, or why are you needing to export this, or why are you needing to deactivate and reactivate before we actually decide, oh, this is the feature they need. So it's happened multiple times where they've asked for something, we dig a little deeper, and it's not really that, it's this. And so we build this. But it's also happened where, I'm not gonna say we're perfect, we've definitely built stuff that people don't use. So, I think it's we try to keep things fresh based on, just as much intelligence, that we can gather.
We used to do problems to solve meetings with the engineering and product team, where it was basically here's some of the bigger problems that we've continued to hear from customers, and we would just have brainstorming whiteboard sessions on what would be the most optimal but interesting way to solve the problem. But the problems that entered into that room were problems that we heard often, and we had a really high conviction that it was a problem to be solved, because those are expensive meetings. So that was how we handled it. I'm 50-50. I think it was a great. We had some great outcomes from those meetings, but we also had a lot of waste in those meetings too. So they just have to be really tight, run effectively, and you just got to make sure as a co-founder you're in those rooms whoever's driving the product vision or is in those rooms to make sure that you stay like on point, because they can meander into, you know, wasteful space.
Mike?
Is there a product or it's just an idea? Ooh, where do you start? I mean, once we had the idea and we decided, have you decided if you're going for it yet? Okay. Nobody does at that point. Yeah. You have to figure out who's going to build this and run it. And then you have to figure out capital. How much, you have to put a business plan together. Ours, I would recommend 24 months. And like everything on the list that you need to operate a business should probably be on the model. And I would put a budget together. And once you look at the budget, you have to figure out how much are people going to pay. So it's really about building a rudimentary financial model to figure out what would you charge, what would people pay, how much is it going to cost, and can you get enough operating capital to at least get through 24 months at your best estimate, and then stress test that model. That's what we did. And then get some advice on kind of ownership structure and cap table, maybe from a couple different people, because I feel like we did that poorly and it cost us a lot of money in the end.
You said you got a lot of conviction and you've done validation already. My initial advice was going to be, and this still could be applicable, go pick the biggest curmudgeon that you know, pitch him the idea, and okay, he likes it, go for it.
I would say, I mean, I'm someone who gets pitched all the time. I believe when someone comes in and says, I see a problem and technology is well suited to solve it, I'm kind of like, yeah, no brainer. So like, I'm never enamored by an idea, right? And you can do some early things to validate it. To me, I thought Megan's advice was perfect. Now you need to think through, is there a business around this? Yeah. So you have validated that this is a real problem, that the approach that you would take to solve it is more than likely legit. You might even got some early signs that you might even have potential customer. Now you got to spend some cycles on, is there a business around this? Because you could go build it, and if you build it, they don't come. Like you've got to think through what's the math. So a lot of ideas I've had are legit ideas, but they're a terrible business. And so then you stop it. So I think Megan's was really good there.
I totally agree. I think like on Megan's point, the 24-month plan, just have like some like clear milestones. Like I think like it's so important just to be focused in those first like couple, first 3 months, first 6 months, first year, 2 years. Focus is so important. So having a clear understanding for the milestones that you would need to hit. Like if your goal is to go out and raise capital, that's really important. If you're going to bootstrap it, it's less important. It's more for you just like to, as a founder, to have your own guardrails and be rowing in a certain direction. Obviously that stuff changes with new information, so be flexible on it. But I think having some like really clear goals and milestones is one. And then like, I don't know, like I'm curious what Mike thinks about this, but like I've had, an idea recently that I just like cannot get out of my head. I'm thinking like, how could I like quickly validate this and see if there's some sort of business opportunity here? I always think like design first. Like I want to see I'll pay $1,000 for like someone to like create a brand for me and throw some slides together, and really think out like this is how I would communicate the business to an investor. It's going to be a forcing function for you to put that 24-month plan together. So I always go to slides. I go to my iPad, I draw boxes, and I literally just draw out slides myself and try to tell the story in my own head. And then I go out and try to tell the story to someone else, like if I still think I have something at that point. So just like lightweight kind of testing, I think is like huge. But
that's so funny because I'm so opposite. I go to Excel, I go to spreadsheets, and I go to numbers. We had customers before we had a website. So if you don't know what the vision is, doesn't mean it won't work. But I like, it kills me. Like I was like, oh crap, we have to have a logo. What are we gonna do? Like we had beta customers and didn't have a logo.
The exact same way as you. Like I live in spreadsheets.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah, I guess my advice is either can work. What I would say is in that business plan, don't view the business like 24 months. View it in like weekly or monthly sprints of what unknowns you're going to answer. So the unknown might be like, do I have a business around this? It will be later on that you will validate, did you have your math right on what you could sell it for? right? You don't have to know everything, but it's basically like, I'm about to run daily, hourly experiments. What experiments do I need to be running this month? What are the ones I'm gonna have to run next month? Like that's kind of the thinking. So if you in the real lean, agile mindset, but to Myles' earlier point, if you're bootstrapped, you gotta know when enough is enough. And that's where the business plan comes into play. I've seen many founders being like, I built this thing, I've already thrown so much money of my own money into it, I still have these unknown questions. It's like, well, answer those questions before you throw more at it. Yeah, so.
Actually, so we started out bootstrapping. Like I mentioned, it was supposed to be a lifestyle thing, and then we decided to raise money. And another red flag is if nobody will invest in it, it's a really, I mean, it's as much as that kills you, but if you can't get those early angels to invest in it, and you're pretty much tapped out personally, like at least you're not going to keep throwing more, like getting stuff out of retirement. You know, don't keep putting fuel on maybe a fire that's not going to spark.
Well, we're at time, so I want to thank everybody. But if you wouldn't mind, for Myles and Megan, a round of applause. And on behalf of Innovatemap and Launch Fishers, really thank you.